All right, so today we're going to deep dive into someone who led a pretty incredible life,
Oh, yeah.
the Apostle John.
Okay.
We've got a YouTube video here that summarizes his story,
Hmm.
and honestly, it's pretty wild.
I'm intrigued.
Surviving boiling oil,
Whoa.
exile,
Mm.
visions,
All right.
and he wrote multiple books of the Bible.
Wow.
It's a lot.
Yeah, that is a lot to unpack.
Now, just so you know, the video comes from a pretty religious viewpoint,
Sure.
so we'll kind of be looking at it from that angle.
I'm ready when you are.
Okay, great. So John's early life,
Yeah.
he was a fisherman.
Hmm?
Pretty young guy, probably in his early 20s when he first met Jesus.
Wow, imagine that.
Yeah, like, talk about a life-changing encounter.
Yeah, for sure.
Him and his brother James were nicknamed the Sons of Thunder.
That's a pretty intense nickname.
Well, if you read the Gospels, it kind of makes sense.
Oh.
There's this story in Luke
Okay.
where they actually want to call down fire on this village.
Whoa, seriously.
Yeah, because the people there weren't exactly welcoming to Jesus.
That's pretty extreme.
Yeah, they definitely had some fire in them.
You're kidding.
But it shows how devoted they were to Jesus, even at that early stage.
Yeah, I see that.
And it's interesting to see how their devotion grows and evolves over time.
Oh, how so?
Well, there's this passage in Mark, a little later on,
Uh-huh.
where John gets upset
Oh, no, why?
because someone outside their group is performing miracles in Jesus' name.
Interesting. So it's like they were becoming possessive of their relationship with Jesus.
Yeah, maybe a little bit.
It makes sense, though.
Yeah.
Like they were still figuring things out,
Yeah.
what this new faith really meant
Right.
for themselves and the world around them.
And speaking of figuring things out,
Yeah.
John's relationship with Jesus is really complex.
Hmm.
And I'd even say a little mysterious.
Oh, really? In what way?
Well, he's often referred to as the disciple whom Jesus loved.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that.
It's a title that has sparked endless debate and interpretation over the centuries. Yeah, no kidding.
It definitely adds another layer of intrigue to his story.
For sure.
And you can really see that closeness in moments like the Last Supper,
Yeah.
where John is described as literally reclining on Jesus' chest.
Wow.
There's a real sense of intimacy and trust there.
Absolutely.
And it's not just at the Last Supper.
Okay.
John is present at all these key moments throughout Jesus' ministry.
Like what?
The resurrection of Jairus' daughter, the transfiguration,
Okay.
even Jesus' agonizing prayer in the Garden of Gethsemane.
It's like he's always right there at the center of it all.
It really makes you wonder, what was he taking away from these experiences?
Yeah.
How were they shaping his understanding of Jesus and his mission?
Those are great questions.
You're right.
It's like we're getting these glimpses into this incredible journey of faith and transformation.
And then, of course, there's that pivotal moment at the crucifixion.
Yeah.
With John standing at the foot of the cross,
Powerful image.
as Jesus entrusts him with the care of his mother Mary. Talk about a testament to their bond.
Yeah. It's really incredible.
Definitely.
A powerful image of loyalty
Yeah.
and unwavering commitment, even in the face of unimaginable suffering.
But John's story doesn't end there, right?
Right.
He's got a lot more life to live.
After the resurrection, we see him at Pentecost, witnessing the birth of the early church firsthand.
Oh, wow.
He's there when the Holy Spirit descends
Mm-hmm.
and thousands of people convert to Christianity.
He just keeps being present for these major moments.
It's true, he seems to be at the center of all this change and upheaval.
And what about when persecution breaks out in Jerusalem?
Oh, yeah, good point.
Does he flee like so many others?
Nope,
Really?
he stays put.
Wow, that's brave.
Yeah, it really speaks to his courage
Yeah.
and his commitment to this new faith.
No kidding. He was definitely not one to back down from a challenge.
That's for sure.
Which brings us to one of the most dramatic parts of his story,
Okay.
the boiling oil incident.
Now, this isn't actually in the Bible. It's part of early church tradition.
Ah, okay.
And it's a story that really captures the imagination.
Yeah. How does it go?
Well, the video describes it pretty vividly.
Yeah.
Emperor Domitian is demanding worship as a god.
Oh, wow.
John refuses.
Uh-oh.
The Colosseum is packed with a crowd,
Intense.
and there's this cauldron of boiling oil.
Oh my gosh, that's terrifying.
It's like something out of a Hollywood movie.
Yeah.
And then comes the miracle.
What happens?
John emerges from the oil,
He gets in.
completely unharmed.
No way.
It echoes that Old Testament story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego surviving the fiery furnace.
I remember that one.
It's this incredible image of divine protection
Uh-huh.
in the face of these seemingly insurmountable odds.
But it also shows how real the persecution of early Christians was.
Oh, absolutely.
Exile was a common tactic back then.
Right.
A way to silence and marginalize people who didn't conform to the Roman way of life.
And that's exactly what happens to John.
So he gets exiled.
He does.
Where do they send him?
The island of Patmos.
What's that like?
This harsh, desolate place.
No.
Meant to cut him off from everything and everyone he knows.
That's awful.
It's a powerful reminder of the price many early Christians paid for their faith. So there he is,
Yeah.
isolated on this bleak island.
What happens next? Well, this is where things get really interesting. Exile was supposed to silence John, but it actually kind of backfired.
Oh, in what way?
Well, being stuck on Patmos led him to write one of the most influential books in the whole Bible.
Revelation.
That's the one.
You mentioned earlier that Revelation is apocalyptic literature.
Right.
What does that actually mean?
Good question.
And why would that kind of writing appeal to someone like John in that situation?
Basically, apocalyptic literature uses really vivid imagery and symbolism
Okay.
to depict this kind of cosmic battle between good and evil.
Interesting.
It often pops up in times of crisis or persecution.
Makes sense.
You know, when people are feeling oppressed or uncertain about the future.
So it's like a message of hope. A promise that things will eventually get better.
Right.
So it's not meant to be taken literally.
Not necessarily. I mean, it's not like a weather forecast predicting the end of the world.
Okay.
It's more about understanding the deeper spiritual realities at play.
I see.
So think of it as a symbolic language
Okay.
that speaks to the human desire for justice and meaning.
Especially when you're going through tough times.
Exactly. When you're facing suffering and oppression.
So for those early Christians facing persecution,
yeah,
reading Revelation would have been really comforting.
absolutely.
It reminded them that God is ultimately in control,
Right. Even when things seem their bleakest.
even when it feels like evil is winning.
There's this greater force at work fighting for good and promising ultimate victory.
It's amazing how something so positive and hopeful
Yeah.
could come from a place of such hardship and isolation.
That's the power of the human spirit, I guess.
So John receives these visions on Patmos.
Uh-huh.
He writes Revelation, and then what?
Well, thankfully, he doesn't stay on Patmos forever.
Oh, good.
After Emperor Domitian dies, John is released from exile.
So he's finally free.
And he goes back to Ephesus.
He goes back to his ministry after all that.
He does. The video says that he continued to preach and teach well into his old age.
It's incredible that he still had that drive after everything he'd been through.
Talk about dedication. There are even stories about him being carried to gatherings because he was too weak to walk.
Wow. He really devoted his entire life to spreading his message.
It's pretty inspiring.
What kind of impact did his writings have?
Well, I mean, his gospel,
Yeah.
with its emphasis on Jesus's divinity and the transformative power of love,
Yeah.
became like a cornerstone of Christian theology.
And Revelation.
Even though the symbolism is often debated,
Right.
it still fascinates and inspires people even today.
It's interesting because Revelation is often seen as this mysterious, almost frightening book.
Yeah, I get that.
But you're saying it was actually a message of hope for
Mm.
the early Christians.
Exactly. It provided them with a way to understand the struggles they were facing.
Like it gave them context.
Right. It assured them that their suffering wasn't in vain.
And that ultimately good would triumph.
Exactly.
That's a really powerful message.
For sure. Especially for people facing persecution and hardship.
But shifting gears a bit,
Okay.
what about for our listener?
Hmm.
What can we learn from John's life today?
I think there are a lot of takeaways.
Beyond the theological interpretations, like
Mhm.
how can his story inspire or guide someone who's facing their own personal challenges?
Well, for me, one of the biggest things is the power of perseverance.
Yeah.
He never gave up. He faced so much hardship, persecution, even exile.
But he never stopped witnessing to his faith.
Never allowed himself to be silenced or defeated.
That's a really important message.
Especially in today's world.
Where it's so easy to feel overwhelmed by negativity and uncertainty.
Right.
But John's life shows us that even in the darkest of times, there's always hope.
Always a reason to keep going, to keep fighting for what you believe in.
And it's not just about fighting.
No.
It's about finding purpose and meaning,
Mhm.
even when your circumstances are far from ideal.
And what about the boiling oil incident?
Yeah, what about it?
Whether you interpret it literally or symbolically,
Right.
it points to this idea that even when facing impossible odds,
Yeah.
we're not alone in our struggles.
There's something bigger than us out there.
Right.
A force for good that's looking out for us.
Exactly. It speaks to a resilience of spirit. a faith that transcends our immediate circumstances.
And connects us to something larger than ourselves.
Right.
So what does this all mean for us today?
That's the million-dollar question.
As we navigate our own complex and challenging world,
Yeah.
what can we take away from John's story?
I think it's an invitation to cultivate that same unwavering spirit.
Okay.
That same resilience in the face of challenges.
To not let the hard times break us.
And it's a reminder that we all have a purpose, a unique contribution to make.
Even when it feels like we're stuck.
And maybe, most importantly, it's a call to never lose sight of hope.
Even when we're surrounded by darkness.
Well said. I think that sums it up perfectly.
So on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this part of our deep dive into the life of the Apostle John.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot of ground, but there's still so much to explore.
Okay.
And in the final part, we'll unpack what his story ultimately means for us today.
I'm looking forward to it.
So we're back and ready to finish up our look at the Apostle John.
Yeah, it's been a really fascinating journey so far.
It has. From fiery young fisherman to exiled visionary.
And prolific writer, too. Don't forget that.
That's true. We've covered his close relationship with Jesus,
Yeah.
the dramatic exile to Patmos, and how that experience led him to write the book of Revelation.
Pretty amazing stuff.
But before we wrap up, I wanted to circle back to something you said earlier.
Oh, yeah.
You mentioned that John's story transcends the individual.
Right.
What did you mean by that?
Well, I think what makes John's story so compelling is that it's not just a story for Christians or even religious people.
Okay.
There are these universal themes that resonate with the human experience.
Like what?
Well, think about it.
Okay.
The challenges John faced,
Yeah.
the questions he grappled with,
Right.
those are things we can all relate to.
So it's not just a story for theologians or biblical scholars.
No, not at all. It's a story for anyone
Okay.
wrestling with life's big questions.
Like the search for meaning.
Exactly.
Or the struggle to maintain faith when things are tough.
That's a big one.
And the desire to make a difference in the world.
All of those things.
So you're saying that even though John's life was unique,
Yeah.
the themes of his story are actually pretty universal.
I think so.
Okay, I can see that.
And think about his time on Patmos.
Yeah, isolated, silenced, seemingly stripped of everything.
But it was in that isolation
Yeah,
that he received the visions.
that led to revelation. So sometimes our greatest challenges
Yeah.
can actually lead to our most profound insights.
I think that's a really powerful message.
It is, especially today.
When it's so easy to feel overwhelmed.
Right, by all the negativity and uncertainty in the world.
Exactly.
But John's story reminds us that even in the midst of all that chaos and uncertainty,
There's something deeper there.
a higher purpose.
Right.
It's about looking beyond the surface
Yeah.
and connecting with something larger than ourselves.
Exactly.
And that's where John's story challenges us.
In what way?
To cultivate that same resilience, that same unwavering faith in the face of adversity.
To not be silenced by our fears and doubts.
But to use them as fuel for growth.
For deeper understanding.
It's about finding the strength to keep going,
Yeah.
to keep searching, even when we feel lost or alone.
And that's the beauty of John's story. It's not a fairy tale.
No.
It's a testament to the human capacity for enduring.
For overcoming, for finding meaning, even in the darkest of places.
Well said.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
what's the one thing you hope our listener takes away from John's story? What's that lingering thought?
I think it would be this. Never underestimate the power of your own story.
Our own story.
Yeah, we all have one.
But go
A
ahead.
unique journey,
Mhm.
a unique set of experiences
Yeah.
that shape who we are and what we have to offer the world.
So you're saying we should embrace our story,
Embrace it, even the difficult chapters,
learn from it, grow from it.
and let it guide you toward your own unique purpose.
That's beautiful. I think that's a perfect note to end on.
I agree.
John's story reminds us that even in the face of hardship,
Yeah.
even when we feel lost and alone,
There's always hope.
always the potential for growth and transformation,
That's something worth holding on to.
no matter what challenges we face.
Absolutely.
Well, a huge thank you to our listener for joining us on this incredible deep dive into the life of the Apostle John.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you've gained some new insights,
Some fresh perspectives.
and maybe even a renewed sense of hope and inspiration.
And until next time.
Keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.